Hi people, welcome back to the short time review about the Fantic so far. I've done about 20 hours on the bike and I've done some different terrains and styles of riding, so I think I can tell a little bit about how the bike handles and how it feels. So, to start with, I really enjoy this bike. So far this has been the best two-stroke I have ever ridden. That being said, there are some issues with the bike. I have had some technical issues which has been resolved and I will tell a little bit about it later. Let's start with the beginning. When I ordered the bike and I started riding it, I already felt that the chassis was really something I would like, but from the start on I already felt like the engine was holding back a little bit because it should have been quite fast dirt bike, and my brother's old 300 KDM 2017 model, the last one with the car, just feels faster, and when we were riding on the straights he could just walk away a little bit, and I expected the new bike actually to be faster than a 2017 KDM. But that probably has had something to do with the issues which came later. So you can hear maybe in the first few video parts and in the later ones after the long section, the bike sounds a little bit different than in the lap I will ride around the motocross track of here. But to start off, you already can see that the bike takes the bumps really good. In the beginning of the video we do a little bit of a top speed run. The bike still does with the 5th speed like a little over 130 kilometers an hour with the stock gearing, so it's still quite fast. So from the start of this bike, the bike has actually been really stable. In the past I always had issues with two strokes being very itchy in front, and with this bike I'm just really good at holding the line, drop it into a corner, hit the throttle, and it just pulls out. So that is something I really like about the bike. Also, it being an aluminium frame, it's really not that stiff, it's actually quite compliant, and I actually really like that. The suspension is maybe it's actually one of the things that I still haven't changed. That's normally when I buy a new bike, within 10 hours I already like, no, this suspension is not gonna work, I want to change it. And still after 20 hours of riding with this bike, I'm okay with the suspension. It is a tiny bit soft, but it's super comfortable and it does not really do anything majorly wrong or get you out at one point, so it's actually really good. It's quite comfortable. So when I started riding this bike I rode it for like 12 hours, and then I did a enduro event in FANtasTIC in the Netherlands, and after 40 kilometers of riding the bike just started to run very shitty, and I looked back and it was smoking very heavily, and I already thought, well, the crankcase seals are blown. The smell, the amount of smoke, and it's not good. So the marshals brought me back to the car. I took the engine apart. The engine is of course Minarelli's own engine, but you can see that there are a lot of similarities with the old YZ250 engine, the way the engine is built, but everything is placed a little bit differently to make room for the electric start being in the correct position instead of the old KDM system, so which you can buy from Pantera to make your old YZ250 e-start. But to make room for that, they changed the placing in the engine a little bit, but the clutch is the same as far as I know. the crankshaft and stuff like that is still the same. The way the bearings are placed, it's the same. Only the ignition has been changed, of course, to have enough electricity to run the lights and everything. But it looks very much the same. So I took the engine apart, and as you can see in the video, the crank seals are blown out of the casing. Then I thought, well, how is it that a two-stroke blows the crankcase seals out? The only thing I could really think about is it ignites too early and the explosion goes actually through the transfer ports because the piston is not high enough. So the explosion goes through the transfer ports and then the pressure just blows the seals out of the case. But why would it ignite prematurely? And I kept thinking and I couldn't really figure it out at first, so I called with my dealer. He didn't really know, so I called a different dealer in the Netherlands, and Bebel Motoren in Lichtenvoorde. He already had the same issue with a couple of his customer bikes, and he already figured out what the problem is. So in the wiring loom there are two plugs, and in this plug is actually a diode, and in the other one is a resistor. But they are loose in the plug, and they have very long legs, which are very thin, and because of the vibrations the leg breaks, and then the current isn't regulated properly, which causes the bike to run maybe a little bit soft because the current is a little too high, and this causes issues with the power valve servo motor because the current is too high or too low. And what you could see is the power valve not opening all the way up. So because of this issue of this little resistor, which is like a 10-cent piece to buy, the power valve motor breaks, you have to take the engine apart. It's not fun. Luckily Fantic came through and it's been repaired under warranty, but because I took it apart myself, I had to put it back myself, but that's no problem. The bike is running fine now, and I can definitely feel it's a bit more powerful with the power valve working the proper way. So I put the bike back together, and after that I rode like 4 or 5 hours, and it's working very good right now. I do have a little bit more power I want it, and still the suspension is good, chassis feels good, so I really do enjoy the bike right now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the handling and the ergonomics of the bikes, because I already made a few changes. So the changes I made to the bike already were bib notches. When I first bought the bike I put in bib notches because that's what I use for riding. I don't want to get a flat tire, and I don't really mind the extra weight of the bib notches. So I put in bib notches. I also put in a higher seat, being 182 centimeters or like 6 feet. I do like the higher seat, so you can stand up a little bit more easier coming out of the corner. It just works better for me. Then the rider triangle is quite spacious. I don't have any issues with that. I'm still running the stock bars and stock grips. They work fine for me so far. So after the electronic issues and a software update, the bike feels really strong off the bottom. Even though this is a quite deep semi-track, the bike just really has a good pull, a lot of grunt. Even with the hill climbs earlier on, it just was very easy to pick up, even with low revs. It does have a lot of grunt. The power curve is quite linear, so there's not really a big hit, but almost at every point when you track the throttle open, it just pulls very nicely and gently. It's not going that crazy, even though it already caught me out a couple of times that it got so much traction that the front wheel goes up with a little brake tap and you will be fine. But it's very strong right off the bottom all the way through. That's one of the characters I really like about this bike. The grunt and the power of the bike goes really well with the suspension settings. Coming out of the corner you can just get the traction and it goes straight forward instead of trying to wiggle a little bit. It just is very crisp and nice. We got a lot of traction and yeah, that is something I really like about this bike. So about the suspension of the bike, I really like it so far. The setting might be a tiny bit soft, but it has a lot of comfort and it still has a lot of bottom resistance. Even though casing a little bit of a jump, it doesn't do anything crazy, it just goes straight and acts like nothing has happened. Also, coming out of the corners when you are in a rut and you have the acceleration bumps, the bike just really don't mind. You can just hit the throttle, it doesn't feel weird or stiff or anything. The suspension soaks it up really nice. The same goes for the braking bumps, and what I'm super impressed by is when you are braking into a corner with the front brake, even though you are hitting the braking bumps, the fork goes into a certain part of the stroke and it still doesn't blow through. So you still have to hold up, it still filters out the bumps a little bit, but you have not the feeling like I have had on my previous KTMs, that you just blow through stroke slowly on and at the end of the braking bumps go all the way down to the bump stop. This bike isn't anything like this, like that. You can just really hit the front brakes really hard without the bike diving too deep, so that is probably the best part of the whole suspension setup. As you can see in the whoops and everything, the bike soaks it up really nice. It's nice and crisp coming out of the bumps, so you can just really hit them in a straight line and just going through them quite smoothly. Even though when you hit something you didn't expect, because it was in a spot with a lot of shadow or anything, and you hit something you weren't supposed to hit, the bike soaks it up really nice and it has a lot of comfort. I already had a few times when I was in the air or anything, like, oh damn, but the bike soaks it up really good, so I'm really impressed with the suspension setup so far. The bike comes equipped with a couple of electronics, so it has traction control. I must say I haven't tested this, I have never liked it on any of my previous bikes, so I left it untouched. Maybe I should try this later on, but so far haven't done it, haven't missed it. Then you have two mappings on the bike. You can view the difference between the two mappings quite well. I have been riding mostly the stronger map, because in the end we just want all the power we need. I've tried the more slow map in the woods. It still works, but I do like the little bit more snappiness. If you see a route or anything, you can just go over it. I haven't really tested it in very wet circumstances, but I think it will help quite well. Overall, I'm very impressed with the bikes so far, so I really urge you, when you buy a Fantic 300, fix the problem with the diode and the resistor, if it hasn't been fixed already for you, and if you do that, then the bike is going to be a blast to ride. Even though I had the issues, I still think of this bike as an amazing piece of machinery. I really like it. It's smooth, it's nice, it's comfortable, and now it has a lot of grunt and a lot of power. And I'm very excited to ride it for many hours going on.